The room was quiet in the softest, warmest way, like a Korean afternoon slipping gently into early evening. Sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, falling across Sun Ye-jin's face in delicate, golden lines. She sat gracefully in a simple cream blouse, hands folded lightly on her lap. Her expression calm but touched by something deeper. It wasn't the expression of an actress promoting a project. It was the expression of a woman finally ready to open a door she had kept closed for a long time. The interview was supposed to be short, just a casual segment for a lifestyle program, but the moment she settled into her seat, everyone in the studio sensed that something was different today. There was an unmistakable softness in her eyes, as if she had arrived not just to answer questions, but to tell a story she had been carrying quietly in her heart. When the interviewer greeted her and asked how she had been, Ye-jin smiled, the kind of smile that comes from a place of genuine warmth, not performance. "I've been peaceful," she said simply. And even the staff froze for a moment. Peaceful was not a word she used often. It was not a word any celebrity used often. Especially one whose name was constantly in headlines, whose every step attracted online attention. Then the interviewer gently shifted the topic, almost hesitantly. "Fans have been wondering about your life after marriage. This is a question you rarely answer. But, would you be comfortable sharing a little today?" Ye-jin looked down for a brief second, her lashes fluttering. And when she looked back up, her eyes glistened with something honest, something vulnerable. "Marriage," she began softly, "is not what I imagined when I was younger. It's quieter, softer, and much more meaningful in ways I never expected." Her words floated through the room with an almost cinematic stillness. She took a small breath, as if carefully choosing which part of her heart to open first. "Our mornings," she said, "are much quieter than people think." And then her lips curved into a tender, almost shy smile. "Ben wakes up earlier than me. He always has." She described how, without fail, she would find a glass of water placed neatly at her bedside each morning. Sometimes there would be a handwritten note, nothing dramatic, nothing poetic. Just little phrases scrawled in his neat handwriting. "Have a warm day. Don't skip breakfast. See you tonight." She laughed gently, embarrassed by how intimate the detail sounded when spoken out loud. "I used to think love needed to be big to be real. But now I know simple kindness can be the deepest kind of love." The interviewer softened visibly, and even the camera crew behind the scenes lowered their shoulders, touched by the image of the superstar couple living a life so ordinary, yet so full of warmth. Ye-jin continued in a reflective tone. "We made a rule, one rule we never break. No matter how busy or tired we are," she paused, holding the memory tenderly in her hands. "We don't go to sleep without saying good night properly. Even if we had a misunderstanding. Even if we're exhausted. Even if we're not in the mood to talk." A small, nostalgic smile crossed her face. "We learned that those two words can save a marriage on days when nothing else can." She admitted that they once had a small argument over something extremely trivial, so trivial she felt embarrassed even mentioning it. "He forgot to buy something I needed for dinner. I was tired. He was tired. It was a silly moment. But we both reacted too strongly." She shook her head with a quiet laugh. "Looking back now, it was such a small thing. But through that, we learned how to communicate better." The interviewer nodded gently, encouraging her with silence. Then came a moment that shifted the atmosphere again, a memory tinted with softness and fragility. "One night," Ye-jin said, her voice almost a whisper, "I came home after a very long day. I was worn out, mentally and physically. Wanted was to rest, but I didn't even have the strength to express it." Often as she recalled the scene, when I walked into the bathroom, he had already drawn a warm bath for me. The lights were dim. My favorite music was playing. And he didn't say anything dramatic. Just, her voice trembled slightly. He just said, "Worked hard. Rest here." For a brief moment, her eyes glimmered with a memory. While trembling with emotion she didn't bother hiding. Realized then that marriage isn't built on grand gestures. Built in the smallest acts of care. Repeated every day. Went on to describe a little corner in their home, one she had never mentioned before. A tiny, private space in the living room dedicated entirely to memories, their wedding photos that were never released publicly. Tiny scraps of handwritten notes from their dating days. A baby picture framed in white. "We don't show this place to guests," she said softly. "World. Just ours." As she spoke, The room grew impossibly still. The entire world outside had paused to listen. There was no glamour. No glittering fantasy. Just a woman, one adored across Asia, talking about love not as something perfect, but as something human. Near the end of the interview, the sunlight began to fade, and the shadows in the room deepened. Ye-jin looked toward the window, her voice becoming a touch more fragile, more intimate. "Marriage didn't change my life," she said quietly. "It softened it." The words lingered in the air like the final line of a slow Korean film. The interviewer didn't say anything right away. No one did. It felt like interrupting a prayer. The light slipped behind the buildings and the room mellowed into a gentle gold. Sun Ye-jin turned back with a serene smile, a smile full of peace, maturity, and a love that didn't need to be loud to be real. Studio lights had dimmed slightly by the time part 2 began, as if the room itself understood that the conversation was about to move somewhere even more intimate. Sun Ye-jin settled back into her seat. Her posture relaxed, her expression thoughtful. There was a softness in her eyes that hadn't been there at the start of the interview, something warmer, deeper, touched by memories she had held quietly for herself. The interviewer gently shifted the topic toward motherhood and the changes that came after marriage. Ye-jin inhaled slowly, fingers brushing lightly against the hem of her blouse. "Motherhood," she murmured, almost to herself, "is something you think you're ready for, until it happens." She spoke with a vulnerability rarely seen from her, even in emotional roles. After giving birth, and prepared for how overwhelming everything felt. The smallest things could bring me to tears. I cried more in those first few weeks than I had in the last 10 years. She let out a small, trembling laugh, as if embarrassed by the admission. I felt fragile, exhausted. I kept wondering if I was doing everything right. Her honesty filled the air like a quiet confession. Then her expression shifted, glowing with something warm. But Hyun-bin, he was there. Every time I struggled, every time I felt like the world was too heavy that day, he stepped in without asking. He would hold the baby when I needed a moment to breathe. He would whisper, "You're doing well. Really well." Paused, blinking back the hint of moisture in her eyes. There was one night, the baby had a fever. Stayed up together, the whole night, holding him, checking his temperature, humming lullabies. She placed a hand on her heart, recalling the scene with a tenderness that softened every word. Somewhere between fear and exhaustion, we realized we weren't just surviving the night, learning how to be parents together. Her voice thickened with emotion. For the first time, I understood that I wasn't raising a child alone. We were growing as a family. The interviewer remained silent, giving her space. And continued, her voice quiet but steady. "There's something I haven't said before. After I gave birth, there were days when I couldn't even bring myself to get out of bed. My body felt foreign. My emotions were scattered. I was overwhelmed." Her lips trembled as she spoke. "One night, I fell asleep crying. When I woke up, the house was spotless. The laundry was done. The baby was fed. And Hyun-bin was sitting on the floor, half asleep, leaning against the crib." She swallowed hard, her voice softening into a whisper. "He looked at me and said, he did rest more than I did." It was a moment that broke her, in the best possible way. "I knew then," she said, wiping the corner of her eye gently, "that I had married a man with a quiet heart. Someone who doesn't need to speak loudly to love deeply." As the interview went on, the atmosphere in the room shifted from emotional to gentle. A warm breeze drifting through an open window. Ye-jin began talking about something unexpected, how marriage and parenthood had affected their relationship. "It's funny," she said with a soft smile. "After having a child, we realized we needed time to reconnect, not as parents, not as actors, but as ourselves." She revealed that recently, Hyun-bin had planned a surprise trip, just 2 days. No schedules, no makeup, no cameras. He told me, "Let's disappear for a little while," and we did. They went to Busan, walked along the beach, talked about everything and nothing. "It reminded me," she said, her voice light with joy, "that we're still us. Still the two people who fell in love long before the world knew." Interviewer asked about how they handle pressure from the media. Ye-jin's expression grew thoughtful. "There are moments when it feels like the world is too noisy," she admitted. "But he always stands in front of me when there are too many cameras. He doesn't say it, but I know what he means. You don't have to face this alone." She took a breath, letting that truth settle. Love isn't loud, she said gently. Sometimes. It's just being protected quietly. Then came the moment that would send the internet into a frenzy, when she revealed a small detail about their future. She didn't specify the exact plan. Mentioned softly. We've been talking about creating a space away from work, somewhere peaceful. Eyes warm with the meaning. Something for the future. Something just for us. It was ambiguous, beautifully so, enough to light up fan theories. Enough to inspire hope. Enough to feel magical. The interview began to wrap up. The room grew quieter. As if holding the final moment in cupped hands. Ye-jin gazed out the tall studio window toward the fading sunset, the sky washed in soft apricot tones. The world glowing gently. Light kissed her face, making her look like the final frame of a Korean melodrama. She spoke without turning back, her voice floating like a closing narration. Once thought marriage was the end of freedom, she said softly. But now I know, it is the beginning of peace. Looked back at the camera with a smile that felt like a warm embrace. And I'm grateful every day for the quiet love that fills our home. The interviewer didn't speak for several seconds, not because she didn't know what to say, but because the moment felt too precious to break. She remained frozen, touched, moved, filled by the sincerity that had unfolded before them. The lights slowly dimmed and the camera cut. Sun Ye-jin stood, bowed politely, and thanked everyone with her soft, melodious voice. She walked toward the exit with the poise of a woman who had lived, loved, learned, and grown, not through dramatic twists. Through the quiet, beautiful moments that build a life worth cherishing. The audience would later describe the interview as healing, heart-softening. The honest she has ever been. And as the article spread through Korea and beyond, one sentiment echoed through the comments. Marriage is not perfect. It's real. And that's why it's beautiful.